Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to continue on in Unit 6 discussing economic and industrial geography. So for the last couple of videos we've been talking about Weber's least cost theory of industrial location, and today we're not going to talk about it specifically, but it is going to be something that ties into it, and so that's why we don't have an intro, because really I feel like it's a very similar topic. At least it's highly relatable, so I don't want you to look at it as something entirely different. So if you remember when we were talking about Weber's theory, we were talking about this idea of labor costs, and he was talking about labor being fixed and these types of things. So I think it's important that we remember that there's a lot of things that go into labor costs, because when we talk about wages and we talk about labor costs, a lot of times we only think about the cost to the employer of actually paying the employee. There's a lot of things that go into that, and I probably won't even be able to touch on all of it. Obviously, I've never owned a business. I've only been an employee, but maybe for those of you students out there who have parents who own businesses, it might be a great idea to maybe go ask them all the costs that are entailed in hiring and employing someone, because there's a lot of things that go into it. And so labor cost is going to be a huge consideration when it comes to employers and industries hiring individuals. A lot of times you might hear things on the television about evil corporations or businesses firing people, kind of hiring and firing them willy-nilly. Well, that's not necessarily always the case, because it costs a lot for an employer to be constantly taking on new employees. So one thing that they want to try and cut down on is going to be turnover. And we have to kind of consider all the additional costs that go into labor. Again, it's not just the wages. Think about all the taxes that an employer has to pay as a result of hiring an employee. These examples will be strictly with the United States, because I'm not as familiar with other countries. But you think like the United States, you have Social Security tax. The employer has to pay 6.5% or so on top of whatever they're paying the employee for Social Security. You have Medicare and Medicaid taxes that they have to pay. They have other payroll taxes that they have to pay. Plus, think about the additional costs that it is, not just paying taxes to the government, but on top of a lot of times salary, there's benefits that go to the employee. Maybe there's a 401k match. Maybe there are health benefits involved. You think about sick time, or you think about vacation time that employees take. I think about as a teacher, if I'm sick or if I'm taking a day off for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. Not only do I get paid my normal salary, but then the school has to pay a substitute to come in. Same thing with any other employee that has paid time off. Not only are they off, but then a lot of times somebody else has to come in and fill in for that individual. So it's an additional cost to the company. You think about the cost that it takes to train somebody. Even if you high schoolers out there have a job, a lot of times the first week or so of your job is nothing but training. And a lot of times companies will pay you while you're getting training. And so there's that cost of you just sitting there going through manuals or watching videos or whatever, and you're still getting paid for all of that. So for every new employee that they take on, that companies take on, they have to go through that same process. And so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for them to be constantly taking on people, firing people, just for very slight, small reasons. So I think it's important to consider those things when we think about industries and where they're going to locate. There's a lot that goes into hiring individuals, and a lot of costs that are embedded in that, and paying individuals and things like that. So, even if I guess I'll just throw this in there as I just thought about it, it kind of came to mind. If your parents have additional benefits, maybe like a company car, a company cell phone, if your parents go on business trips and the meals and the plane tickets, so there's a lot of expenses that are there. So I would encourage you to consider those things when we talk about labor costs and why companies might be moving or going places in order to lessen the labor costs that they have to pay. So that's when we talk about the difference between machines and labor. Not really difference, but you think about as companies begin to switch over and begin to look for ways that they can use machines as opposed to labor. You think about the use of machine. Obviously, a lot of times the machine itself is a lot more costly up front, but in the long run, machines don't require the same attention and care that an individual does. Machines don't need time off. They don't need breaks. They don't get pregnant. They have to take maternity leave. I mean, even I guess it'd be paternity leave when my wife was pregnant with our children, or actually not pregnant with them, but after we had the children. They don't need lunch breaks. They don't ask for more money. They don't ask for anything. They just simply work, and of course they require some scheduled maintenance. They never go on strike, they never picket, they never talk bad about the company, they don't get on Facebook and post bad things. And so, there is a lot of advantages to using machines as opposed to individuals for labor. Now, obviously, there are some intangible things that maybe people can do where machines can't. But for all those reasons I was just discussing, there are a lot of benefits to using machines, which is why a lot of companies are switching over to that. So when we look at issues where companies might be considering moving somewhere so that they can lessen their labor costs, we look at something what's called the substitution principle. And basically, what the substitution principle is, when a company decides that paying higher transportation costs for lower labor costs is more beneficial to them. And so you see this with a lot of things like textile industries, things like the computer industry, having chips manufactured overseas. It's more to them. It is more beneficial to pay higher transportation costs to ship goods from Asia to the United States, or maybe to Mexico to be finished and then into the United States, as opposed to employing those jobs in the United States. So they are willing to raise their transportation costs in order to lower their labor costs. And again, that's what's called the substitution principle. Another important element in our modern industrial situations, we have what are called Footloose Industries. And Footloose Industries are exempt from Weber's theory because we're talking about the manufacturing of products. We're talking about the development of products where their transportation costs aren't really going to be much of a factor because of a couple of things. Typically, they tend to be lightweight materials, so their transportation cost based on weight isn't going to be, it's not going to work out there. But they're also high value items, and so because they're lightweight and high value, and a lot of times they're pretty costly in terms of their manufacturing. The transportation cost isn't. It's not as it says non-factor. When I say that it's a non-factor, it means that transportation cost is going to be one of the things that the company doesn't really consider because they're looking for a lot of times looking for lower labor costs. And so with that, you don't really have to worry about shipping the materials. You don't have to worry about the cost of shipping the final product. Isn't something that a lot of companies worry themselves about. So instead, they look more at the labor cost. And you see this a lot with the manufacturing of computers, electronic devices, computer chips, those types of things. Also, I've seen diamonds are considered an example of these footloose industries. And so again, that's going to go against Weber's theory because of the unique situation that some of these important items, or not necessarily important items, but valuable items find themselves in. The last thing we're going to talk about is this idea of what's called interdependence. And you've seen this in your everyday life. You just didn't know of the term interdependence. So basically, we're looking at companies or industries locating themselves in a position because of the fact that their competitor is close by, and this is what's called locational interdependence. It was theorized, or it was kind of expounded upon, or I guess discussed by an economist named Harold Hotelling, and he developed this model called Hotelling's model, which is down here on the bottom, which basically just illustrates this concept that you have these two businesses. You have these ice cream stands on the beach. They're going to locate themselves near each other so that they can take advantage of the same market, but far enough apart so where their markets are not necessarily overlapping, so that they each can maximize their own profits, so that they're not really having they're able to take advantage of the market share that they are able to handle. And again, the whole idea is you're locating yourself where you are based upon where your competitors are. And again, you see this all the time. You just didn't know the name of it. Think about any time you see a McDonald's, you almost always see a Burger King. Okay, and in fact, it's well-known fact that Burger King actually waits for McDonald's to do all the expensive research of deciding where to put a new store, and then Burger King will come in behind them and then just put their Burger King near wherever the new McDonald's is going. Same thing with gas stations. You always see gas stations across the street from each other. Wherever there's a Walmart, there's almost always a Target. Wherever there's a Kroger, there's almost always a Publix. Wherever there's a Home Depot, There's wherever there's a Home Depot, there's almost always a Lowe's, and of course this is specific to chains in Georgia, not necessarily chains all over the country, but you've seen it wherever you are, wherever there's a store or an industry of some kind. There's a competitor nearby. Car dealerships are another great example of that. Wherever there's a Ford, there's a Chevy dealership. So again, those are all just some examples. But again, they're all there to look to share the market so they can maximize their own profits. It doesn't really do any of them any good to be too close to each other, because then there's potential for there not to be enough, or to saturate the market like we saw with deglomeration. Otherwise, once the market's saturated, then probably one of them is not going to make it. And so again, this is, instead of Weber's theory of company or industries locating themselves based on the raw materials in the market, this is based on each other. And so that's that concept of interdependence. So now we'll move on, and we have time for a quiz. Ferret, our dear little furry friend, has popped his head up out of the ground, and he has a question for us. Now this is going to go back to our previous video on Weber's theory of least cost industrial location. So here we go. Here's the question. Our quiz ferret question for today is, which type of industry is most likely to locate close to raw materials? And again, this is based on Weber's theory. So think about Weber's theory, what we discussed. Pause the video for just a second, and the answer is a weight-losing industry or a bulk-reducing industry, either one of those. So anyway, that's all that we have time for today. I hope you found that to be helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment box below, and I hope to see you next time.